my cell phone started getting calls. Literally like the heads of studios and some of the biggest execs in this town, because they thought I'd made this independent feature film.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unlikely Story. I am one of your hosts, Chris Loafing.
And I am your other host, Travis Clough.
We have a very special guest today. Very special. Tyson Wade Johnston. Do you go by the Wade? You still have the Wade in there?
On screen, yes.
Yes.
I've never actually introduced myself to anybody.
So just Tyson Johnston.
I'm thinking about dropping
friends.
it, but for now, it's Tyson Wade, yes.
You guys both have some pretty cool middle names, actually.
What's your middle name?
I don't want to say that on the podcast.
Do it.
It's not going to happen.
He doesn't like his middle name. I think it's cool.
I'll let people research and see if they can find it.
What's the initial?
It's T.
Tyson?
T. No. I'll let people dig and see if they can find that one out. But
maybe we'll do a prize if you find it out and put it in the comments.
Chris's middle name. Yeah. Tyson Johnston is a writer, director, VFX artist, editor, kind of a jack of all trades, really, filmmaker. Tyson has done work for huge things, commercials, ads. I mean, you're usually directing, editing, graphics, artist, VFX, a lot of post stuff.
Yeah.
But he's also created numerous short films, usually sci-fi, and they all have just incredible effects for like nothing budgets. I mean, they're the stuff you pull off in these shorts is incredible, and they've got attention and caught the eye of some pretty amazing people, studios, executives.
Tyson basically puts people to shame for what he does with the budgets that he has.
And they're all just like totally guerrilla made, with nothing, no money, just like your own
by way of necessity. And it's as I've grown, that's kind of just become my style as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
I love that. And
we're going to get to some of your inspirations, because I think a lot of your inspirations are very similar. Tyson just directed his first feature, STREAMLINE, which releases this summer, but he's also just a super talented dude all around, and also my film school roommate from NIFA.
Yeah.
We were roommates together for, what was that, a year and a half, 2 years?
We shared an apartment with, there was four of us in there.
Four people? Yeah. It was quite crowded.
I'm shocked any of you are still friends with me from those days. No, I look back so fondly on that time.
Despite how many times I said, you got to bail on that guy, bro. Like, he's dragging you down, man.
Until Travis lured me to Fresno. That's how that ended.
Yeah, that's true. I was like, dude, come live up here with me, be my roommate with my family, and let's make features.
And help me pay rent.
Yes, because I needed it at the time for sure.
But welcome, Tyson. It's good to have you up here in Fresno.
I'm happy to be here. I'm so impressed with the setup. Like, I know this is episode 4 or 5 or something, but everything looks and feels legit. Like, I'm proud of you guys for getting this going.
We appreciate it, man.
That's the way we roll. We do things legit. We don't do them unlegit.
They have. Ever since I've known this, guys, it's like they say they're going to do something, and then it gets done.
Yeah,
with no delay, and you guys have been that way since I've met you both. So
we've been trying to produce Tyson here for 10 years or something, some feature or whatever. We're glad you got the feature you did under your belt. We're glad you got that experience, and you're just that much better of a filmmaker for it, and we're that much more excited to collaborate on something.
Yeah.
Well, Tyson, it's good to have you here. We want to hear a little bit from you, just to start off, how you got started in making films. How did you become interested in becoming a director, filmmaker?
I kind of naively found it. Like I wasn't that young kid that like went and saw Taxi Driver or 2001 and I was like, I want to be a director. I grew up in this small rural town called Albury in Australia, and my mom just had a video camera lying around the house, and I was obsessed with it. And there was I was really inspired as a kid. I just loved these like jackass movies, and that those were my origins as a filmmaker. I loved movies because this was such a small town, and I'd go to the movie theater so often and see these big blockbusters and whatever was available in Australia. But my origins as a filmmaker, I was just always carrying a camera around, and every school project I was making a film for. And then when I moved to America when I was 16, and it went from like little jackass tapes to these mock short films that I was making with my friends in high school. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was like directing.
Right.
I was rallying people to show up after school and be a part of something.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure your own origins is just that. And it was, cutting these things, putting them on YouTube, interacting with audiences. And it was that. And then I was getting a lot of like editing and shooting work in high school. I worked for this company called Baller's Life, which is...
I remember that.
Yeah, it's a huge basketball company now. And I was like one of the first 3 to 5 guys involved with that. So while I was in high school, they were flying me out to tournaments in Vegas, and I was shooting mixtapes.
While you were living in Australia?
No. I was living in Boulder, Colorado.
Oh, in Boulder. So, okay, got it.
I was flying out to these and doing this really cool, exciting stuff. And
while you were in high school?
Yeah, and these things it was like the fun days of YouTube, and this stuff was getting millions of views. The things that I would film and cut, and that my friends at the company were filming and cutting. So it was awesome. And I was just kind of naturally gravitating towards things that I enjoyed and things that I love. And I had no idea at the time that I was like building a skill set that would contribute to my survival for the rest of my life. But
yeah, for those of you that don't know, Tyson is like 7 feet tall as well. So filming basketball and being able to do that kind of stuff is a good thing.
I wasn't the best at basketball though, and I think that's why I loved that first job. It's like I was filming the best kids in the world, like in the country, the best high school prospects that they're all in the NBA right now. So
that's cool.
It was fun for me. It was a dream,
That's awesome. And I remember, and this transitioning probably pretty soon into film school. I remember in film school, even before we became roommates, there was already this kind of like talk around the campus that this guy named Tyson was kind of like this wonder kid of making stuff at far advanced above many of your classmates. And I saw it immediately too. And I imagine a lot of that came from this early experience of you just like naturally gravitating towards things.
It was all technical though. Like I'm sure if you watch those short films right now, like there was no story going on. It was all stylistic and technical, and I was the guy that everyone came to cut.
Yeah.
No one knew how to like use a computer.
You were the post wizard. You're the one that taught me After Effects. Like I learned After Effects from you.
You've probably leapfrogged me. Like some of the stuff you're doing is incredible.
I don't know about that, but I remember you giving me or like introducing me to Andrew Kramer. Showing me the tutorials, the action essentials. All that
must make you like my grandpa,
because then I passed that on
to me, and I was like, well, I hadn't done, which is interesting because I'm kind of the grandpa in the bunch.
Yeah.
But it was tough. I mean, I was much older when I learned how to do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I learned from
what were your origins? Like, where you made a film?
Dude, I was in finance and long-term retirement planning before any movie stuff.
Yeah.
And I was that until 2008 and a half. The housing bubble in 2008 like knocked me out. I had invested money in a company that turned out to be a Ponzi scheme, flipping properties that they weren't actually doing.
Yeah.
And so like I was in a tough spot, and then I went on Wipeout. And then that all happened, which was hilarious.
I've seen the footage.
And you've seen it. You dream of it. Everyone dreams of the footage from Wipeout.
See super shorts again.
But those shorts. Anyway, so at that point, I was like, I got to get into entertainment. I had a band in college and was excited about that stuff. But that made me want to get into writing and filmmaking.
In what age, like what point in your life was that?
I was,
30-something.
I was in my 30s. How old? You were 19, so I was 32. I was 32 years old.
It's brave to pick it up and pursue it at that age. And 32 is still so young. I'm 30 right now, and I feel like a dinosaur. But to start at ground zero at that age is awesome.
It was weird. It was weird, given that I was married already for near like 10 years, and I had 2 kids, one on the way. No, I had 3 kids. No, 2. I had 2 kids because it was 10 years ago that episode aired.
But we met during my knife thesis film.
Cross,
yeah.
I remember it. It was awesome.
and I want to get into your thesis as well. Well, actually, I don't remember if it was your thesis.
I don't want to talk about my thesis.
What was the one you did with Gigi? What was that one? Was that your thesis or no?
What did I do with Gigi?
It was like your first collaboration.
No. That was it was like the midterm kind of thing.
That one was awesome though. That one was cool.
Turmoil. It was cool.
Turmoil. Yes, Turmoil was sweet. I remember
Mitesh shot that.
Mitesh shot that. Tyson made this movie. Was it like an apocalypse type movie? It was like
like a post-apocalyptic thing with zombies.
It was really cool. And I remember, again, like leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of the stuff that was coming out of your class. Yeah. But it was a lot of style, a lot of really cool camera work. You got some really cool production value. I remember you had like a freaking helicopter in that. Yeah, I was like, how did he pull this off as a film student?
One of the actors involved liked my stuff, and every short I wanted to do, he just paid for it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have any. What? Yeah. I didn't have any money back then, so it's like it. I don't recall when we were making those shorts at NIFA. Did we have to self-finance?
Yeah, they didn't give us any money. They gave us gear, but no money.
Yeah, I recall.
Well, that saves you a lot.
It does.
Everything I ever did, I recall just doing it guerrilla.
Yeah.
I never, because we were all just shooting in each other's apartments.
In terms of like permits and things, is that what you're talking about?
I wasn't going to be the guy that shot something in the white-walled, carpeted apartment.
It's honestly, looking back, it's kind of crazy actually that we were tasked with making a dozen short films through that year, and yet none of them were fun. Like we were expected to basically fund them all ourselves. They did give us gear, but that didn't include craft services, hotels or location fees, permit fees, which are a thing in LA. Like, it was just crazy.
I mean, look, part of the reason I think this podcast is important is because there are issues with the way things have traditionally been done. And most people in the industry, I feel, come from enough money that they don't worry about the day-to-day that most of us who came from nothing have to worry about, in addition to getting something made and paid for. You know what I mean? Like if I'm if my family is super wealthy or I have like, an inheritance or something that's just puts money in my pocket every month, I'm not worried about food or rent. So I can just like goof off or like pay an extra $1,000 or a couple $1,000 for a short film. That's not a big deal. But when you're like, I'm working 2 jobs to pay rent and for this film school, and now I got to pay for a film. Like, that's tough. That's a hard thing to do.
It's really tough. And I saw a lot of incredibly talented people kind of fall off and move out of LA by way of just not being able to afford these things. I was so lucky in that right after film school, I got a job like doing commercials with this commercial production company that kept me employed for several years. And I feel like what would have happened to me if I didn't find this guy on Craigslist who was actually doing like really cool stuff and gave me great responsibilities right away.
Right.
Because I didn't have runway at all, and I wouldn't have lasted long. Or if I didn't have the skill set, like I said, I was the only one in my class that could cut.
Yeah.
And
without the ability to do that, your excellent directing skills would have never been displayed.
Exactly. And there was a lot of people like in my class that were like amazing directors, and they couldn't survive in LA. And some of them now are starting to reappear and make films. Robban Anderson,
I remember him.
Amazing first film, and he's making a second film, and
yeah,
built a production company out in Sweden.
So what do you say then? Film school, yay or nay? Should people pursue
there was utility for me in film school in the people like you. All of my friends and peers, I don't know if I believe in like the 4-year film school kind of thing.
Yeah.
Our situation was awesome because I remember
were you both in the 1 year?
We were.
Yeah, and it's
different classes, but we both did the same.
I'll speak because we were a couple months apart, I think.
Yeah.
My first day, I was on we were in the backlots of Universal, the Western backlots with like 35mm cameras.
Yeah.
Shooting stuff. And I have friends that did the 4-year program at some school, and they didn't shoot anything until the 4th year.
Wow.
Oh,
and like you said, it was like insane. It was actually a lot of work that we did have to make multiple movies over this short, compact schedule, and we had to not only make our own, but work on everybody else's.
Yeah, we had to be crew on everyone's, learn every aspect, everything.
Which is so much better to help you be more well-rounded.
Yeah, exactly. And once you've held the boom mic and pushed the dolly and rigged the lights and shot the thing and cut the thing, you get perspective on every kind of angle.
That's pretty much what I tell people too when they ask me, because we get a lot of young people who ask, about film school recommendations and stuff. And pretty much what we always tell people about film school is it's really about the connections. It's about the relationships you make. I wouldn't be where I am without those relationships. I would never have met Travis.
Sadly, that's kind of an expensive friendship.
It is. It's expensive
and it's
to
like
make that.
a faux friendship. It's not real.
But,
But
at the same time, here's the thing. If you're just super talented, kind of like you were, but you're out in the middle of say Nebraska. Still are. But you're out in the middle of nowhere, out in the sticks, Nebraska.
I wish I saw myself like you guys see.
Yeah.
Continue.
You wouldn't really get anywhere until you meet someone, until you meet that person that's going to give you that connection to this, to that. It's like, it's all about the connections at the end of the day, no matter how talented you are or not talented you are. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
There's some people out there that aren't that talented in the industry that have crazy connections and are making crazy deals.
And crazy resources to money. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, do you really deserve that? I don't know. But Tyson is definitely one of those people that deserves it. He's super talented. I want to get back to your shorts. But before that, we got to discuss probably the most important shorts you've ever made with me. As a director and you as an actor.
I'm so jealous of these because they were kind of my idea, and then you guys went and did some really awesome ones, and I was like really bummed.
It was Travis's idea. I will give him the credit because I was talking to Travis on the phone about the Pepsi commercials and Doritos commercials that the Super Bowl puts on.
Yeah,
put on the contest.
The contest.
When it kind of lined up perfectly when we were straight out of film school. The Doritos and Pepsi would do these contests every Super Bowl, where you would self-submit these funny commercials you made, and they would pay you a ton of money if they liked yours and air it on the Super Bowl.
Right.
You came to me with this hilarious pitch that we made something that was so wildly inappropriate and dark and violent and twisted, and I was like, and I got to beat the shit out of you. So sign me up.
It would be absolutely awful to play something of this nature as a commercial during the Super Bowl. Worse than like Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction. Like you just play it off like, oh, we submitted our commercial. I don't know why they didn't take it, but it's like, it's really ultra violent. It's ultra.
We called them the banned Pepsi commercials, BANNED banned Pepsi commercials, because they were, as they said, so violent that there's no way that Pepsi would have taken them. And, I say them because we made two of them. We had the first one that we made, and then we made a sequel because it was so much fun to do. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, I'll post a few clips. I won't go into, I'll probably have to blur some stuff out, to be honest, because I don't want
the entire frame.
Keep the show PG here. But you can look these videos up on our Tremendum YouTube channel. Just look up the banned Pepsi commercials, Tremendum on YouTube. They're pretty freaking funny. And Tyson stars in both of them as the guy that's kicking my butt and literally killing me on national television.
You're kind of unkillable in those things. It's like Peter Griffin and the giant chicken in Family Guy.
Exactly.
I look back so fondly on those because it was kind of like the bookend of when we were all living together and when we were all amateurs.
Yeah.
And we were all acting in each other's stuff. And it was kind of, our days were like waking up and it's like, what skit can we do today?
Yeah.
Me, you, Brendan, Justin, Alan and John, like everyone who was involved with those. And it was like, when I started making my short films, and then I became very precious about like my name and my work. And it was also just a different time with the internet.
Yeah. I remember those got featured on Funny or Die. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's right. And it was kind of, the internet was just like the Wild West where anything goes, and there was, it was a ton of fun, and I love it because I'll always like maintain the joy in filmmaking.
Yeah. That's what I was about to say, is like, it's one of those purest forms of creation. And I think that's what people love about TikTok and Instagram and these forms today, where you can make something, put it out, and get instant reaction all in the same day.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. It's the most exhilarating feeling. And it is the exact opposite of what we experience making feature films. Because you are waiting years.
You shoot it, and it takes a year to get through a basic edit and a rough edit.
Yeah. That's why I'm so stoked for you guys that you have this as this podcast, because you can turn things around kind of weekly.
That's the hope. We're hoping to have this regularly and talk to awesome people like yourself, hear your stories.
Did you want to hear my idea for the banned Pepsi commercial? That
3.0 or the original?
The original idea.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad.
So this
In a
is
great
to give
way.
you an idea of how bad these commercials were going to be. So my thought was is like you have this beautiful scene in a hospital. You have this mother and father, and she's in labor, and she's giving birth to this beautiful child. And the doctor's like, "Here, Dad, here's the first one, but you have twins.
Beautiful baby boy.
Beautiful baby boy." And he's like, "Son," and the dad is just
Holding it
looking
in his
at the
arms,
beautiful
yeah.
baby, and then the second baby comes out, and it's this beautiful 2-liter bottle of Pepsi Max. And as soon as the dad sees it, he throws the baby, it smacks the wall, and just slides down like a cartoon.
Oh, it's so bad.
And then he goes for the Pepsi Max 2-liter, and he's holding it like, oh, and he's just so excited, and that's the commercial essentially. Like,
And the mom's all like, "Give me the baby."
Yeah.
You have to sketch up storyboards and make an animatic out of that to play over.
I know, right? It's so bad. It was so.
It's like, oh, how awful.
Well, we did the best we could do, not having a hospital or a doctor or a baby in film school. But
those were fun. Like, as well as how much fun it was for us to make, like to watch what everybody else across America was making was so much fun.
Yeah, there were some really cool things made.
Yeah.
I want to get back to your shorts. I think the first really groundbreaking sci-fi short you did, correct me if I'm wrong, was Exist.
Mhm.
Is that right? Exist was pretty freaking cool. Tell us a little bit about that process. We're going to show, if you're watching on YouTube, guys, subscribe on YouTube if you haven't yet. Tremendum on YouTube so you can watch these episodes as well, because we do show some cool clips. We're, of course, happy to if you're happy to listen, that's amazing too. But check it out on YouTube so you can see some of this stuff. But tell us about Exist, how it came to be, and some of the, highs and lows of that production.
It to this day, like, still might be my favorite thing I've ever made, because it was so pure and instant, and it was the whole thing, like from the inception of the idea to shooting and locking picture on that was 24 hours.
Wow.
That's so cool. Tell us the concept. Tell us what it is, kind of the basics.
Yeah, what's the log line on
Without
it's my pitch when I was going around to studios was it's Close Encounters meets Kids. Like, it's this really gritty street version, street style kind of POV of these two guys milling about downtown LA, and one of them gets abducted in broad daylight, and he's this immigrant who's Alain Singayed plays a French immigrant. He's just trying to make a name for himself in America, and he's a loser and he's a nobody, and he gets abducted, and all of a sudden he's the most important person in the world.
Mm-hmm.
The short, though, it's a found footage kind of thing. That, but so the idea first came from, I was watching a documentary called Man on Wire about the French guys that tightrope between the World Trade Centers.
Mm-hmm. And
there was this image of the guy in between the World Trade Centers and thousands of people down below kind of staring up at him. And it clicked instantly. Like, it looked like an abduction to me, this man kind of hovering in, and it being in broad daylight, as opposed to all the, close
all the
encounters.
tropes, like it's nighttime, it's spooky, it's a
cornfield. And
yeah.
I was like, just broad, what would happen if this was just broad daylight and everybody saw it? And I was with two actors at the time, like, because we everybody lived in the same apartment complex, and I pitched them the idea, they loved it, and I wrote this little, like, maybe 5 or 6 page script. We stayed up all night kind of rehearsing it, and then we just caught the subway to downtown, and we just started shooting it in the subway.
Yeah.
We didn't go to bed. Like, we just went straight to downtown and started shooting the thing. It took me a couple weeks maybe to finish post on that, but I remember putting it online. I cut together like a trailer for the thing.
Yeah, I remember it. Zach Lemon did music for it, right? Is that right?
No, that I used a Godspeed track for the trailer.
Oh, okay.
No, for the actual short film, he
did the music, yeah.
And I put it on YouTube just for fun, because I was so proud of this little. It was like a trailer for a short film, which I would never do now.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how this happened back then, but my cell phone started getting calls from studio heads, and I must have had like a website or something online, but literally like the heads of studios and some of the biggest execs in this town, because they thought I'd made this independent feature film. It just didn't have distribution. It was like, So everyone was like bummed when I was like, oh, it's only a short, but they were still like, we want to see it, we want to meet you. And the short did really well. It was received well online. It got featured on a ton of blogs, but it got my foot in the door as like a 19-year-old into every studio in town.
Yeah, dude, you were 19. I was about to say that was my next question.
And I was living with you.
Yeah, we were.
Time, right?
You were. I was still with you when you did that one for sure.
Yeah.
And that's the part that still amazes me to this day is how much you blossomed from that short. Like you said, getting contacted by these studio people, having these crazy big meetings as a 19-year-old filmmaker.
And I was obviously way too young to capitalize on any of it. And it's like, I obviously did have a bit of talent, but it was so raw, and I was not like the son of the film director who was raised in LA and who had been on film sets his whole life. And I think I probably would have reeked of that going into every one of those rooms. It's like, this kid's great, really creative, can execute, but like he needs years and years and years to develop and learn how to tell story. I was making these short films, and it's not that like I love science fiction, but it's not that that's all that I wanted to do.
Right.
But there was this class of director. It was Duncan Jones and Josh Trank and Ryan Johnson and Gareth Edwards and Rory Robinson. All these guys went from short film to feature film.
Yeah.
And it was entirely feasible that you, as somebody who had never made something before, could make a cool little short film and then get
a huge movie,
like $20 million.
Right.
And I was attached to projects of that scale.
Yeah.
I was just kind of young and in over my head, but it was totally feasible. And then it was kind of all of those directors I just listed. Their first films had like huge success.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of like follow-up films and follow-up projects and copycats and imitators. Like these films just started failing one after another after another.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it wasn't cool to be like the science fiction short filmmaker. So.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you feel like you maybe missed the wave of that a little bit, like just barely or something.
Yeah, it was what it was, and it's what got my foot through the door and what got me speaking. Because I went straight from like film school classmates, like who were the same as me, who had never done anything, to being in rooms with like amazing execs who have produced films that I've grown up on and loved, and so that's the purpose that served in my life.
Yeah, it was still you. And again, we talked about this on the podcast with Ryan. It's the journey, you know.
Yeah.
So look back and you reminisce and you think about this journey you took and how amazing it was, and all the lessons you learned along the way, in the good times and the bad. Probably mostly in the bad, you know, like the things you took away from it.
And honestly, being in the indie world, having worked with the studio world, which we have on just about all our films, there's elements of control and artistic, license that you lose by working in those environments.
Totally.
Some of the directors you mentioned, like some are fine, but like some of them went on to go do some things, and they got just eaten alive by the studio execs on some of those films.
And I see why that happens, and I felt this in some of those rooms that I was in. Is like I made these short films with my best friends.
Right. Right.
And I got to assemble my team and my crew and make the things how I wanted to make them. And and I was in rooms with some of these people, and I was like, I can't see us pairing up and doing this thing for years of our lives.
Yeah. There's not like such a camaraderie.
Shared commitment or even just taste.
Well, it's funny how like so intricate, small little details too in telling a visual story in a film can totally make or break something, you know? And
absolutely.
You as a filmmaker have these very intricate tapestries woven in your head. You know exactly where the pieces are going to go and how they're going to connect. Even if people are improvising, even if people are throwing curveballs, you're taking it and you're like, okay, yep, that's going to work here. No, that's not going to work. Let's cut that. You're doing that live in real time.
Yeah.
Studio executives, they just pop in and they're just like, I don't really like that. And they have no consideration as to all the things that it's going to affect down the line.
Yeah.
And so that's where you see these tragic, downfalls of big studio movies where there's a lot of, so we hear studio interference and things just go off the rails, like Suicide Squad or Justice League or, some of these things. Sorry, DC, I threw two of you out there.
There's that Jack the Giant Slayer one. That one had the same thing. Like, do we make it PG for kids? Or, man, it needs to be heavier. well, we can't go R, so it's like it lands somewhere in the middle that doesn't serve any audience.
Yeah.
That happened with Fantastic Four too, with Josh Trank. Who knows? Maybe a lot of that was his fault, maybe, but I'm sure there was fault all around because Fox was notorious for, taking projects and kind of flipping them on their heads without the director's, take on things, or without their artistic, integrity that they had when they were filming it. So if you're going to do that kind of stuff, it really makes for a kind of a jumbled mess.
Yeah,
it always does. And what never fails, like even if it's misfires, like seeing somebody's completed vision.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe it. Like filmmaking is so collaborative, and you do need hundreds of people to be involved with it and to contribute. But at the end of the day, it needs to be driven home by a singular voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and hopefully with the help of people that are sharing that vision and
adding to it.
It's like you need to have a single vision, but everyone needs to have their eyes singled to that vision.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
And I've seen films that I didn't love or didn't feel like they were strong, but as long as it was that like singular, there's always something to take away from those movies, and it's so much better than watching the thing that was like clearly intended to be one thing and then it became something else over the course of months and months of just
that's interesting
of stripping it down and transforming it into something it's not, and it's.
I think it's cool though for us to be able to have still worked independently with our friends, with our crew, with our team. We're like the independent version of, Adam Sandler movies. You know how he gets all his team and his people together and they just go make movies and have fun
somewhere exotic
and write it off in Fiji or in Hawaii or wherever.
Yeah.
Like we haven't had those budgets because we don't have, the same name recognition as Adam Sandler does from his great career. But
you'll get there.
But all the movies that we've been making, we've been able to make our way.
Yeah. We're here with Tyson Johnston, everybody. I just want to tell you about him one more time because he's so awesome. He's a writer, he's a director, he's a filmmaker. He's done amazing things. Again,
editor, visual effects, all of the catering, the
catering,
whole thing.
Everything. A lot like us. I mean, we've worn all these hats, and I think to be a really good filmmaker, you do need to go through all of that. Tyson, I want to focus on the writing for a second. You have written a lot of your own material, if not all of it. Tell us about a two-part question here. Tell us about the writing process, how you've developed as a writer, and also what kind of advice could you give to someone, because you have been in so many pitch meetings, and I feel like you've kind of run the gamut of how to pitch projects as a writer-director. What are your top pieces of advice for pitching a project to a studio? So writing and pitching. I want to hear about both.
I'm actually a terrible pitcher. And it's so uncomfortable to me, and I hate it. What I love is having written something that they've read and then just like pitching the execution of it.
Right.
For some reason, I'm just not. I'm not salesy. I'm not that guy. I know people that do it really successfully.
But you have to be to a degree.
I can be like once they've read the thing.
Yeah.
And loved it. And then I can sit with them and tell them how we're going to do it. And that's exciting for me.
Well, that's just talking about what you love. Yeah. That becomes what I'm easier.
Yeah, what I'm good at. I can't sit across from someone and convince them to give me money to write something. And it's like, I've done that. And there is like a sense of conmanship to it. Even though I know that I can write and I can back it up. It's like, I'm just more comfortable writing the thing.
Yeah.
But there is like, so after that first wave of short films that I'd done, I saw that people that were on that path weren't making movies. Like people that needed a lot of money. And so I kind of just like recalibrated, and I sat down with my manager, and he kind of like, he just looked at my work that I'd done, and he's like, what type of movies do you want to make? And I pitched him the type of stuff that I was into, and he said, "You need to learn to write," because he's like, "Those scripts aren't going to fall into your lap." And it was the best advice I'd ever been given, because I was a director at that time. When I was meeting about projects, I was meeting as the director, and they would have writers attached, or I would bring my own writers on. and he really hammered me and held me accountable for learning how to write.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I was reading as many scripts as I could every week of my life. Every time there was a press release about a movie I wanted to see, I'd ask for the script. Every year the Blacklist came out, I'd read as much as I could. Every time I saw a trailer for a film I loved, I'd email my manager and say, "Get me that script." Every time one of my friends wrote something, I would read every single draft of it, and I still do, and I love that stuff. And it was a long, frustrating process of learning how to write, but that's what led me to my first film.
I think that's great that you took the time to read all sorts of scripts, and that stuff gives you a much better idea of how to write and how to not write.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's a big deal, is taking the time, honing the skill, honing your understanding of what a script should be.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that's something that we still struggle with in terms of writing a script. We've been getting better, but we don't fancy ourselves as writers,
I think
more
you
than
should,
filmmakers.
Because that, as fans of your work, I was telling Chris this today when we were picking up lunch, it's like that. My favorite, I love the stuff that you've written and directed and built from the ground up. And that, my favorite filmmakers are the writer-directors, the guys that have built something out of nothing. And if not for them, it wouldn't exist. And that to me is in your DNA, like both you two as a team.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. It's something we definitely want to get better at. We recently had a script dump, if you will, of a lot of scripts. Was it last year? Maybe the year before. I think it was last year.
It was early last year.
We had a bunch of scripts sent to us from
20 or 30 scripts.
Really cool producer who was just eager to do something with us.
And we're looking to do something with him as well.
Yeah, and it was cool to just dive into all these scripts from various writers and learn different patterns of writing, what's good, what feels off, and just absorb it all like a sponge.
Some of them were really great. Some of them were like, look, for the budget it would take to do this, it just doesn't seem like a good business decision, even though it might have been fun.
And we're, of course, looking at all of them through the lens of, can we make this in Fresno? Can we produce this?
An indie film production company,
right?
Does it make sense? Because when we're at the plate, we've got to hit home runs, at least triples, but we gotta come all the way home with those films. We're not like a studio where we can pump money into it and then, buy enough, marketing to get the money back. Even on bad films, which happens all the time, a big studio will make a film that's like, that movie stunk. But they had enough marketing to get it in the world and in the minds of everyone to go buy their $10, $12, $15 tickets that it worked out. They can do that kind of stuff. Ours, independent film, you have to know what you're doing. You have to focus so hard to make sure that one project you're working on turns into a home run.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it could take you out of the business for the rest of your life.
No, totally.
Yeah, that's a great point. You mentioned,
but you guys know your, you know yourselves as filmmakers and as tremendous, that was a film that you guys built from the ground up.
The Gallows.
You wrote that on our floor, the first outline when we lived together.
Yeah.
That was a script you obtained from someone else.
No, we developed that with a person, our neighbor's sister.
So you developed it.
We talked to her.
What I was going to say is that it feels like your DNA, that movie.
Yeah.
And obviously her perspective on it was incredible. But it didn't feel like you just taken someone else's script and made it. It felt tonally and atmospherically the same as The Gallows.
I appreciate that, man. Speaking of Held, by the way, for those of you listening, you mentioned this just a second ago, and I want to come back to it. Writer-directors, I know you've always had a appreciation for writer-directors. Who are some of your favorite filmmakers and why? And why should some of these filmmakers be paid attention to?
Paul Thomas Anderson, Damien Chazelle, Andrea Arnold, Lynn Ramsey, Chris Nolan, Ryan Johnson. It's I love people that are making really personal films on a large scale.
Yeah.
And not large as in the production of it, but philosophically, psychologically. Memento is a huge film.
Yeah.
And it's his production-wise, it's his smallest, but it feels like one of his biggest.
Right.
That's an immense psychological...
Is it possible, do you think, that that's the way directors are now? I mean, used to be you could, a director was separate from the writer, but I feel like studios and people are wanting a writer-director because they're going to get a director that's more intimately familiar with the script than anyone else. They don't have to try to deal with two different chefs in the kitchen, you know? It's like if the director knows all about the writing, they can execute better.
Yeah. But I look around at my friends that are making movies. They got their first couple movies off the ground. They're all writers. And that's how you guys got your first.
It's a real entrepreneurial spirit to it. It's like you're writing it, you're running it from the ground up. You know, you're the guy, you're the captain of the ship,
the person to do it. And it's like who is going to give you a shot as a director if unless you're being really proactive about it and chasing screenwriters and convincing them to develop material for you. It's like it's not like it once was where you were like a great stage director and they would bring you on and pair you up with a screenwriter and put you in a bungalow and develop something and give you a several picture deal.
That's kind of the old way. I want
to emphasize one thing in there too, that for young filmmakers listening to this or watching this, writing your idea down or even just having an idea doesn't cost a thing.
Nothing.
It's the one piece, if not the only piece of the movie making process that doesn't cost you a dime. Writing an idea down, having an idea, just outlining it in your mind or on paper and thinking on it and adding to it doesn't cost you anything. So if you have ideas, that's good. Write them down. You know, keep track of them. Put them in your journal. Start learning how to write those things out in a way that can be explained to other people.
What really excited me when I first dove head first into screenwriting was I'd come from this place of getting myself, exhausting myself over years and years and years making these short films. Because it took a long time to shoot them, to cut them, to do all the VFX. Like I think with Luna, I was in post for like a year, just doing every single shot of that movie.
There's a lot of cool VFX in that too.
Yeah.
For those of you watching again, and if you're not, and you want to look it up later, look up Tyson Johnston's films, Lunar, Seed, Exist. The visual effects are really cool. Sorry, continue.
And that I think Precog Studios and Rolf Mahor were partners on that, helping bring. But I was doing all the compositing myself.
That's right.
Then when it came to screenwriting, it's just you and a laptop. And you can do it all.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, there's no restraint. There's no restrictions. Holding you back.
Yeah.
It's just your own persistence and your own work ethic and your own education. That's all it is. And I have friends that have made millions and millions of dollars just off of that, out of their apartment.
Yeah.
And there was something really, when I made my first film, that was something I never really got over. It was this big, for me it was big, this multi-million-dollar thing and I was like, I wrote this in my bedroom in my underwear. and
thank you for that visual.
Yeah, but that was always trippy to me. I was like, this is that's all it was. It was just me in a room for couple months just getting it done.
We had a similar experience when we were sitting in Chris's room in our little tiny 3-bedroom condo with my kids and my wife and my family. We were in his bedroom / our office, and we had just received the file of the WB New Line logo to put in front of our little movie that we edited and made in that bedroom. And all of that happened.
It was like the file. It was the Warner Brothers logo, their MOV 4K file or whatever, and it was on our computer from them.
So I have to note, like you said earlier, that my trailer going viral helped you guys kind of strategize and inspired you. But the Gallows poster going up on the Warner Brothers sound stages that we walked by every single day of our lives to go to school. Walking to NIFA, Chris and I lived on NPAS in Burbank. And we walked by those sound stages every day of our lives. And there are these big, 50-foot posters.
Oh, they're huge.
And you know, it's as a kid, you look at them with dreamy eyes, and you're like, my poster's going to be up there one day. And you guys actually did it within it was such an outrageous turnaround from getting out of film school to having your poster there.
Dude, that was wild. I got to admit, we did not expect anything like that.
It was so great. We went and took pictures.
I remember seeing the photos. I saw it in the flesh too. I drove by a few times, but it was truly one of the trippiest things I've ever seen in my life. And I can't how did that feel for both of you?
Oh man, it was just surreal. I mean, yeah, I guess that's the best word for it. But I remember thinking the exact same thing. It's like I biked this path every day on my stupid little bike going to film school, and they'd have Ellen posters or Justice League, whatever they were touting at the time, and then to see Gallows up there was just like, what? They actually? What? Oh, well, that's cool.
it can happen.
Did you know they were going to do that?
No,
we didn't know.
I don't remember even how we learned of it.
I think someone posted a picture, one of the cast or someone was like, oh my gosh, so cool. And we're like, what?
Yeah.
We have like a 50, 60 foot poster on the side of a soundstage at Warner Brothers. And that's when Chris was like, I would ride my bike from my little apartment to New York Film Academy along that pathway. And I can't believe we now have a poster up there for our independent film.
It's wild.
Where's that photo needs to be hanging in the office?
We've got a picture. We're gonna have to throw that up in this episode. It is a cool picture. I know I put it on my Instagram.
What's the best place to check out these shorts of yours? Is it on Vimeo or
Vimeo or YouTube? Yeah.
Vimeo or YouTube. But again, look them up. Tyson Johnston with a T in there.
Yeah,
that's right.
They're all really, really, really cool. And they're both, keep in mind too, they were before a lot of the sci-fi movies you've seen as of late. These predated a lot of those movies, so that it's really cool stuff. Tyson, what are some, you're quite the connoisseur of movies, especially sci-fi and these indie type movies that break out. What are some stories that have inspired you, be it from an actor, a film set, a director, things that you've heard about in just the industry, stories from set that have inspired you and just wowed you, things that were pulled off in a crazy way?
I don't have an answer for that right now. I'm trying to think. Like, give me an example of something you would.
So like El Mariachi, like Robert Rodriguez making that movie for, what did he make it for? Like $7,000 or something, and stuff like that. Like we love hearing stories like that of people getting things done in unconventional ways, not letting anything hold them back, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. I have a cool story recently that I'm not going to say the filmmaker's name, but like she's a close friend of mine, and she'd made this movie that I felt was amazing, and I saw it maybe 3 years ago, and she couldn't find distribution for this movie, which blew my mind because I genuinely thought it was an amazing movie. And I thought about it often, and when I was out to dinner with people, I would talk about this movie. Like it was one of those films that's controversial and that asks big questions, and I couldn't shut up about this thing. And I had tough conversations with this woman where she thought she'd failed and done a bad job, and she moved out of LA. She got a job doing something else, and it crushed me because it was like she belonged in the big leagues, like working. And it came out recently, and it got rave reviews everywhere. New York Times, New Yorker, LA Times, Chicago, like the biggest outlets you could. It's probably got like 100 on Rotten Tomatoes, and and her career has launched. And I thought that was incredible, that the same thing that everyone is telling you they can't pick up. It's like the second the audience got their hands on it, they ate it up. They loved it.
Yeah.
And
that's really
I've
cool.
never been...
But the industry kind of just trod it under their feet.
Yeah, and I would still like to know why...
Yeah, why did that happen? How did something so good slip through the cracks of the people who are supposed to be the experts?
Yeah.
It's a great story of perseverance too. Like you said, your friend like basically gave up. Like I thought she failed, and like just
I forgot to mention, like she maxed out her credit cards like making this movie.
Oh wow.
To my knowledge, like put most of the money in herself.
Wow.
And I know you guys you've financed your own movies, and it's a huge risk.
It's massive,
and that it's paid off for you guys. But imagine if it didn't.
Yeah.
I hate imagining if it didn't. And several things are always like very close calls.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Things aren't always as bad as they seem, but they're not as good as they seem.
Yeah.
Especially from the outsider's perspective. Like some people will see what happened and they're like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. But they don't understand that there's a lot behind the scenes that still is, a burden of work to do, or a big risk that they just can't comprehend without going through it. Now, I'm glad to hear that she's seeing success, because and I believe that's a testament to perseverance and really going for it the way she did. You put everything into it, and your heart and your soul. A time will come when that will be seen, recognized and appreciated.
Yeah. And it's like she made it was such a personal film that, and I found the more personal the films that you make are, it's like the more accessible they are to everybody. And I think these things would feel, it's what execs feel isolating about a film, is like, oh, nobody's going to want to see that. But the more particular and the more specific a film is, it's like the more it's going to click with people.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works out. You know, you try to think in broad brush strokes as an executive. I feel like that's what they do, and you're right. It's most of those movies feel so detached. There's no characters that we love, no one we can relate to, no themes that are true to
the story is too big.
It's like empty in a way, and then you got a real personal story that may, on the surface, seem like it's just about this one person in 9 billion people.
Yeah,
but the story relates to literally 9 billion people. You know, it's like it's a universal truth or message.
And that's what I found watching the film, is it changed my perspective on a few things.
That's a powerful thing.
Yeah, in a way, it's really hard for anything to change your perspective on anything.
Oh, yeah.
But this, it was kind of like the Q&A session after the movie where we all discussed the story, where I realized that what I thought, I can't go into detail about this because it would reveal the film.
Right, but what you thought it was about was maybe even deeper.
Well, some things that I thought weren't controversial in the film, people found massively controversial. And I was like, oh, that's my perspective just as a man watching this. I felt the way that guy behaved was okay.
Yeah.
And I would do the same thing in his situation.
Right.
The film's about a couple. And I was totally wrong, and the film taught me that. And so that's why it was such a talking point after.
Interesting.
And another example, my friend, and you guys were here for this, Minhal Baig made this incredible film called Hala. And it was my first time seeing a friend. You were the first friend I saw make a movie, and she was the second. It's like we were all a part of this group that was kind of coffee shop hopping around LA, just writing our films in Hollywood, and I saw how much work she put into that, and the stages of making a proof of concept, getting financing, casting, shooting the thing, post-production. I was there for like a color session, and it was and then all of a sudden it had this huge premiere at Sundance, where we all hung out together.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we were there.
That was so fun.
That, it was really trippy and surreal for me just because I had a porthole kind of view into her process over the course of years leading up to the release of this movie, and then just seeing the eruption at Sundance, and it sold to Apple, and it was, yes, stories like that, like what you guys did with The Gallows, what she did, and I was like, okay, I saw that guy on the floor writing the first outline of The Gallows. I saw Minhal at a coffee shop writing the first pages of her script, and it's like, okay, what we're all chipping away at here is very accomplishable.
Yeah, and it's all the same process. It's all the same thing. Yeah, Travis and I will often say this. We're like, man, I wonder what the pros are doing. They're doing the same thing we're doing.
Same thing.
Same exact thing.
Also, something that's important for people to remember and understand is that if you don't feel like it's the hardest thing in the world that you're doing, if you don't feel totally down or depressed at times, if you don't feel like it's an insurmountable quest that you're on, you're not going to feel as elated when the success comes.
Totally.
Well, and you should be saying to yourself, or you should realize that is normal.
Yes.
In the filmmaking process.
It is normal to feel all those things.
There was I've not done any of the master classes, but I
just got an account. It's amazing.
Did you? I'll share that with us. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I will get our own.
They made it so you can't.
Okay. Never mind. But I always see the ads for them, and there's one I saw for Ron Howard's, and the bullet point in the preview was, every movie you make is going to find its way to breaking your heart. And I'm like, yep, that's so true. I mean, it's so true. But it just goes to show how invested a filmmaker and an artist has to be to see it through all the way through to completion, and how invested you really need to be. And yeah, when things don't go the way that, your friend planned or whoever planned, and things, wrenches are thrown, it will crush you. It will literally crush you, but you'll be okay. You're going to make it through.
But that's why it's so important to pursue the right ideas, like to pursue a film that you can like Sisyphus, you can push that boulder up the hill over and over and over for years and years on end. And that, if you didn't love the gallows, I'm sure there were times where you could have just let that boulder crush you on its way down the mountain. And my first film was the first thing that I wrote that truly was like the one thing that I could fight for.
Yeah.
Every filmmaker I've seen see something through to completion. It's the ideas that they cannot not see be made.
Right. It's like the idea of like, I've made this, I can die a happy person now. I've got that idea made. I saw it through. Tell us.
I remember you posted something on Instagram years ago about the creative process. It was a dumb little meme about you think it's the best thing in the world and you think it's the worst thing that's ever been done. Yeah. And just the highs and lows, like watching like an assembly cut for your film for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's horrendous.
I remember when I did my first cut of my film, all these individual scenes, I was like, I cut them as well as I could, and I was sending them to friends, and it was like, holy shit, like this is amazing. And then you watch this bloated 2-hour, 40-minute cut of something, and it's like, what the hell have I done?
Yeah,
and then you think you failed, and then and then you get in and you start ironing through, and then it starts to take shape, and you're like, okay, my instinct was right. Like I knew I did something.
Yeah, you knew it was going to get there.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that, actually. Now that we're on the topic of your first feature, STREAMLINE, how was it making your first feature film? Tell us about the experience on set.
It was an amazing experience, and it
you shot in Australia, right?
Yeah, so that was like the coolest thing in the world to go back home. And I shot in the same city that I grew up in.
Oh, okay. No way. That's cool.
So my family was on set like every single day, and I got to cast my cousins in the movie.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was amazing, but it was a really personal film that I'd written in like a really low point in my life. And it grappled with a lot of like family history and family trauma and just personal trauma of mine. And it was built the story is a drama about a swimmer who's grappling with family traumas like concurrently on this pursuit to become an Olympian.
Starring Levi Miller, right?
Levi Miller, who's amazing,
and Jason Isaacs,
and this amazing cast of just Australian talent.
That's awesome.
We're all unbelievable, but I was like being a swimmer was my first dream growing up, and Ian Thorpe, the Australian Olympic gold medal.
The torpedo. You got to work with the torpedo on set, didn't he?
I'll send you the photo. You can flash it up.
I love it.
No, this guy was my hero, like growing up.
I remember watching him in the Olympics too, going, "Dang, the torpedo! Like that's such a perfect name. It's like he was named for what he was put on this earth to do.
He's an icon."
Yeah,
and so I just developed this script that was about a world that I was like, I knew so much about, and I was so fascinated about. It was actually, there was a Lynn Ramsey short film called The Swimmer. I saw that, and it was the first time I'd seen swimming on film, and I was like, oh, this is actually like really cinematic. And I love like my favorite films are like kind of recent film, like Whiplash, Foxcatcher, Black Swan, Rust and Bone. These really like visceral kind of athletic movies.
Yeah,
Raging Bull. And I was like, I want to bring swimming into this like arena of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the most personal script that I could about a character who was kind of grappling with what I was personally grappling with at that time. And I think because it was so real and so honest, off of just the earliest draft of the script, we got financing kind of immediately.
That's awesome.
Through personal financiers and Screen Australia and Screen Queensland. And I literally within a year of me conceptualizing the idea to from the time it sat like page 1, started writing an outline to on set was under 12 months.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Movies take so much longer than that.
They do.
They do. And people don't understand that. Like it takes years and years and years. Some decades. I mean like
that'll never happen to me again. And it was just such a
I can't. We can't do that.
I can't do that.
You can't. I feel like indie filmmakers especially are like, we don't have the time to wait around for all the like different people to check all their own individual boxes to greenlight something.
Yeah.
And that's how the system works. The system is that way.
Well, the Australian system is actually pretty like amazing.
Oh, great. Okay.
Because the government and states put money into these films.
Oh, nice.
There are like the conditions are that you have to hire.
Well, you have to bring.
I think Jason Isaacs was like and one of the producers they were the only two international hires we could have on the film.
Okay.
But thankfully, because of all this like Marvel stuff going on in Australia right now, there's so much talent. Like everyone on my crew had just come from like Thor or Aquaman.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, and they're Australian, so the coolest people in the world.
That's amazing.
So that was it was a wild ride, and it was such a. I had so many fears going into that project about if I had what it takes to do a feature film. Like what always daunted me is that there's going to ultimately be people packed into a theater, and the lights are going to go down, and the doors are going to close, and they're going to be in the seats watching something that I've written and directed and crafted for 90 plus minutes. And I was like, do I have what it takes to string together something coherent and build suspense and maintain their attention for that long?
Yeah.
I had no idea. And tell me on your films, because that was my first experience shooting like out of order. And I remember shooting the final scenes in the movie on the day 2 and 3 of the film.
Yeah.
Shooting the emotional climax where you haven't even really had time to see what your lead actor or your supporting actors are bringing and what they're giving you.
Oh, yeah.
For us, for me anyway, Travis, you can chime in on for you, but for me, it's always a bummer doing that, mainly for the actor's sake.
Yeah.
Because I know what needs to happen. There is an element of what you said, like you haven't seen exactly what's been filmed yet, so that obviously can affect you and how you would approach the scene. But I always think about it from the actor's perspective. How is it going to affect them trying to reach this emotional climax, as an example, when they haven't gone through just the actual experience of the rest of the movie yet? They've only read it on the page. They haven't actually lived it yet.
Yeah.
And I feel like being able to shoot in order is always preferred when you can do it, just because of that alone. Like the actors get to live the movie before they do it.
There were certain things that would kind of change the following scene if you were to do it again.
Yeah.
Nick Refn, I've heard, shoots his stuff chronologically, and it's like, so when you're making something like Drive, it's like there's something that some happy accident that happens, or something that Gosling does in scene 12 that changes scene 14, and build and build and build.
No, that's true.
It's very true.
It still happens when you're shooting out of order, but it's harder to correct or account for.
Yeah.
And harder to roll with. You're always rolling with punches, but when you're shooting out of order, it's harder to kind of make one thing pay off that I feel like it's accidentally set up.
I feel like it's also just easier to mess up when you're filming out of order. It's like it's just easier to forget little details that connect to this scene to that scene, and it's like
that's where it helped me to have written the screenplay.
Yeah, you knew it inside and out,
and
intimately familiar with all the details.
Shortlisted everything and worked with the actors, and I knew the wide lane that they had to play around inside of.
Right.
No one was in a box, but I knew when something was when they'd crossed into the
too far-fetched
incoming traffic.
Preventing anyone from going off road.
Yes.
Essentially. Yeah. Trying to keep it on the right road, the same road.
It's like lift some people up and bring some people down. And that goes to every department, production design, wardrobe, cinematographer, every cast member.
Yep.
Locations. It's like it all feeds into itself.
Yeah.
And what's the status of STREAMLINE now? When's it coming out? What's the deal with it?
It releases in the Melbourne International Film Festival this August, and theatrically, there was like the tragedy of that. So that was an experience of like immense highs and lows. You saw the director's cut.
The director's cut.
It was awesome, by the way. It was awesome.
Yeah, we loved it.
Thank you, and I'm so proud of that.
Looked great. I loved it. The visuals were awesome.
You did make
Michael Latham, who shot the assistant, shot the film.
Very cinematic.
Yeah, he's incredible, and every actor I'm so proud of, and in particular Levi. Like, but yeah, no, it was kind of the nightmare story of first-time filmmaker and the people you get entangled with. I leaned more into my eagerness to make my first film than leaning into my instinct of surrounding myself with amazing people.
Right.
It was kind of this amazing unifying thing where everyone bound together and worked twice as hard and rallied against these crazy circumstances, and it made it all more special and more personal. And I'm so proud of the work everybody did. But
yeah, it's interesting because you can really rally together as a group and a team when your leaders are not living up to the standards that you expect. It causes everyone else to raise their own standards in a way that they might not have done it. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing or that should happen.
I grappled a lot existentially with that because I believe in right and wrong and karma.
Yeah.
And just balance in the universe. And it was the first time in my life where just this grossly unfair thing happened that so outweighed the goodness and the efforts
of everyone.
Yeah.
That's true. I would say also that not knowing who you were working with is a tricky thing. We didn't really know when we were working with Jason Blum and 360, we didn't know a lot of these guys, but I would say that our experience was great. We had great meetings with these guys, and our experience with them was good. Even though Jason had final cut on our movies, he allowed us to do the final cut.
He has a track record of being very supportive with filmmakers.
Yeah, and that's something that you got to give Jason credit for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I love that Jason treated you guys like that and helped you. He was a force that was helping you push the boulder up the mountain, and he helped you see through your vision.
What would you say the biggest lesson is that you took away from it all, from the whole thing?
Let Chris and Travis and Tremendum Pictures produce my next movie. That's what you need.
Besides that, that's obviously number one.
It was really that. Work with people you love and that love you and that care about you. Surround yourself with amazing cast and crew, but the film at the end of the day is going to come down to you and a couple people in a dark room working with a cut. And no matter how good a job you do on set, and no matter how good a job your crew does and your cast, no matter how great the performances they give you, it's like if the wrong people are in the room with you, or if you're not in the room at all, everything can be sabotaged. It made me a whole lot more forgiving when I see films now, because I'm like, I don't know what this person went through.
Yeah.
And especially first-time filmmakers who haven't found their circle of people to protect them yet.
Absolutely.
I used to walk out at films at ArcLight Hollywood and I'm like,
that was trash.
That was horrible. What were they thinking? Why did they do that? And you just don't know what. When you go through things like that, you're not necessarily allowed to speak about it.
It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're at least grateful for the experience, grateful to have made the movie, and that just the simple fact that you made your first feature was huge.
Yeah, and it like squashed all of those fears I had going in.
Yeah.
It's like when I saw the final thing, I'm like, okay, I can do this.
You can do it.
For the rest of my life.
If we could kind of wrap up on that, I would want to hear, Tyson, from you. What are your best pieces of advice you could give someone who maybe is just starting out, or someone who is looking to make their own content? From your perspective, what are the small and simple things they could be doing right now to get better at making movies?
Make as much stuff as possible. Shoot it yourself, cut it yourself. Like surround yourself with people that are way more talented than you at everything, and just be as proactive as you can about manifesting your career and making it happen, because it's never going to be given to you. And the people that are getting stuff made are the ones that are working their asses off and sacrificing so much. And if you're not that person, you're going to get beat out by that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the most important, learn how to write and learn how to write well. Because if you deliver a strong script, it's going to get made.
And we talked about how to do that.
Yeah,
read scripts, read.
What you guys are the best at is like write with consideration of what's makeable.
Yeah.
Like design your earlier films around like just a few little set pieces that you can pull off yourself.
It's such a simple thing too. It's like write something you can make.
Yeah, and that was Tarantino's thing with Reservoir Dogs. He made the film that if everyone told him no, he could go do it himself for $30,000. And that's, he got to make the $2 to $3 million version of that, whatever it ended up being. But STREAMLINE was the first thing I ever developed that was small. So I'm one for one when I got to see it all. I shoot small, and that everything I develop and write just in the near future is going to be with that in mind. It's like, if all else fails, can I make this for $200,000, for $500,000
with Chris and Travis?
Yeah,
exactly.
No, right here, right now, we want to produce your next film, dude.
I want to be here. I've seen
Fresno.
I've seen the operation that these guys run up here. I was here for a pilot a few months ago, and I've seen the crews out here, and you can do a lot for a little out here in Fresno, and I've seen it with my own eyes, and I'm desperate to get out here and work with you guys because, like, going back to what you were talking about with. Just how meticulous you guys are, and that I know when I see a Tremendum movie that it's the best version of all of the assets you had, all of the footage, that every performance I'm watching is the best, that it's as big and vast and atmospheric and impactful as it could be. And that's the final step of filmmaking. It's like, and I know with you guys that you would do the reshoot that the film needs, and you would spend the extra couple weeks or pull open the sound mix again, or go back to the composer. Like you would make sure that the thing is the best version of itself that it can be, and that's something that's very rare, and not a lot of people in this town go to those lengths, and that's why I want to make a movie with you guys.
We appreciate that.
Many, hopefully.
Yeah, many.
Can I just bottle that up and drink that all day long? Whatever you just said, I want to put that in pill form, and that's going to be my drug of choice.
Yeah. Every morning.
It's
inspiration. That along with the Tremendum ringtone on your phone as your alarm.
Yes, I need that.
We talked about that
Swap
yesterday.
it out with the logo that opens your movies.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Well, I would ask you what's next, but that's what's next for you, Tyson, is making a movie with us. I mean, let's be honest. It's
dude.
amazing.
We are going to give you the support that you've never got.
No, I can't wait. And it's like when you go through a very traumatic, like terrible relationship, you recalibrate and you find someone that's right for you. And that's that. I took my first blow from producers, and now I've recalibrated, and now I'm looking for the healthy partner. So.
That's amazing.
We can't wait. You guys, this is probably one of the most important lessons that I think that people can learn. Filmmakers, anyone wanting to be in the industry, whatever aspect of it, if you're wardrobe, makeup, whatever, grip, doesn't matter. If you can have that work ethic and put everything out there, even especially because it might not be your project or whatever, you're working with someone with a vision, but if you know that they're going to put their guts into this thing, you want to join them in that fight.
Yeah.
You want to help push that boulder up the mountain, because it's heavy and it's hard and it's strong, and you're never going to understand what the director is having to go through.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what they're doing when they're not on set. They're preparing for the next day. They're worried about all these other things. They're not sleeping.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you can have the attitude that I'm going to give everything I've got to this and help this vision move forward, and you work the way the director, now you got to find a director and producers that will work that way, that they're going to give, like you said, the best of everything to the film. That kind of attitude is going to go so far. You really have to, if you're a director, you have got to give those actors everything, your all, to make them as best as they can be in the movie. If you are a grip, you're going to have to just be there, do the stuff, help the director to do that. And everyone will win that way.
Yeah.
If you have one bad apple, one person who's like, or phoning it in, that will permeate the film and it will destroy it.
Yeah.
Here's to pushing that boulder. Here's to pushing that boulder as a team. Well, guys, I think we're going to wrap up here with Tyson Wade Johnston. That's where we can follow you, right? Tyson Wade Johnston. Is that your handle on Instagram and social media? Tyson Wade Johnston.
I post a lot of videos of my girlfriend.
Yeah.
But just a warning.
Don't judge him.
You post some, well, he's got a really beautiful girlfriend.
And she's funny.
And she's super funny. I've seen some of the stuff. But guys, follow Tyson, follow his career. He is literally going to make the next like Rogue One or District 9 or something crazy cool very soon, hopefully in Fresno with us. But this has been an awesome episode. Tyson, thank you for sharing these insights.
It's so awesome to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and we'll do it again soon, and we'll be talking back on the film we've just made. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll be showing a lot of behind the scenes of
our brand new movie, the new Tyson Johnston movie.
Yeah, man.
Well, guys, thank you again for joining us on this episode of Unlikely Story. Be sure to subscribe to watch these on YouTube at Tremendum on YouTube, or listen wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, any of those. Thank you guys for joining us.
And go make your movie.
Do it.
Right?
Yep. Make the movie no one else can make, just you.